You know what, they got a screen right in front of me that is exactly what you're saying. I'm hypnotized. Wow. So hi, yeah, I'd like to talk to you all. Oh, they changed the shot just so I wouldn't. Right. Don't think that's going to prevent me from looking at myself. Oh, so that's what I look like in a wide shot. Yeah. See, this is what happens if I watch Star Trek. That's all I do. I don't pay any attention to the show. I'm just going, yeah, I'm kind of looking okay. I can't believe I got old. But anyway, I'm happy to answer any questions you would like to ask me today. Just a couple areas, if you don't mind, I'd like to stay away from, and that's Star Trek and my personal life. But anything else would be fine. You know, I'll tell you a story. A friend of mine worked on a movie with Charles Bronson back in the day, and he was really excited about it. And he said the first day of shooting, the assistant director came over and said, hey, Charlie would like everybody to come to his trailer. He'd like to speak to everybody before we start shooting. So he thought, oh, this is cool. Yeah, he's going to welcome us all on the shoot. So the whole cast and crew gathers outside of Charles Bronson's trailer. And he said, we're waiting. Finally, the door opens up, and Charlie steps out, and he looks out at everybody, and he says, I don't want anyone looking at me. I don't want anyone talking to me. And he goes back in and closes the door. Now, the reason I'm telling you this story, there's no reason I'm telling you this story. I'm just telling you the story. Anyway, I have had this idea, by the way, for another book. Have you read my book? Yeah. Everybody here in Kansas City has read my book, right? How many people here have read it? Okay, 3. So, for the rest of you, I wrote this book. It's called Fan Fiction, and it takes place in the 3rd season or 4th season of Next Generation. What was my point? Oh yeah, well, so the people who have read my book have said to me, when are you going to write another book? Because they liked it. Let that be a lesson to you all. So I was thinking, you know, I want to write a book, and I was thinking, maybe I'll write a book. I've met so many amazing people in my career, and you know, I think fandom, by the way, is sort of a theme of mine, and celebrity and fandom. I've always been interested in that, and I am a fan, and I say that in the book. I'm a huge fan of so many people, and I've rubbed shoulders with so many amazing people in my time. And so anyway, I think that's my next book. It's just going to be stories about people I've met. And like, you could name anybody in show business, anyone famous who has like been alive in my lifetime, and I have met them. Name somebody. Who? Olivier. Larry, I called him. No, I never met Olivier. I didn't meet John Lennon either, but I did. I lived in New York for many years, and John Lennon, I'd see John and Yoko, they would walk past me, which was thrilling. That's New York, though. You walk past people all the time. I walked past Jackie Kennedy, and I couldn't believe it. And, but the night, there was a night in December where I went down to the Public Theater, which is the New York Shakespeare Festival in New York, and it's downtown Manhattan. I lived uptown. But I went to see a play that was a version of Alice in Wonderland that was directed by a director I'd just worked with there. And he invited me to come see the play. Alice in Wonderland, the star of the show was a musical version. The star of the show was a young actress. I didn't know much about her, Meryl Streep, and she wasn't very good at it, by the way, but she got better. I'm told. But, no, yeah. But anyway, I was on my way home in a taxi, and I lived up on 89th Street between Central Park and Columbus, so the cab was going up Central Park, and we passed the Dakota, which was at 72nd and Central Park and West, and there were police cars and lights and sirens and everything. What's going on there? And I got home and turned on the television and found that John Lennon had been shot. And just an amazingly creepy feeling and night. And but I'm sorry I never met him. I did meet George Harrison once. He tried to pick up my girlfriend. He really did. We were sitting across from him and on a plane, and the next thing I knew, she had his number, and he had hers, and I was like, and I went, well, he's a Beatle. Can't really blame her. Anyway, see, it works just like that. It's like I have known everybody, or have an attachment to everybody. It's like Kevin Bacon, you know. I mean,
do you know Kevin Bacon?
Do I know Kevin Bacon? I've met Kevin Bacon.
Okay.
I was actually in a restaurant in London with my friend LeVar Burton, and Kevin Bacon came over to the table, and he knew LeVar, and LeVar said, "Brent, this is Kevin Bacon," and he reached his hand out, and I said, "You know what? I've got a terrible cold. I'm not going to shake your hand." He said, "Come on, I don't care about stuff like that." You don't care about germs? Anyway, he's a very nice guy. All right, so I'll like fascinate you with more stories about my associations and shoulder rubbing, but in the meantime, what would you like to ask me?
Hello.
Hi.
Recent New York transplant myself. I was on 70th in Central Park.
Right, I remember.
Neighbor. So with the advancement of technology in film and television, has the craft of acting and performing changed much since your early career?
Not really. I mean, you know, because acting is acting. It's always been, the idea has always been, if you're on stage, you just talk a little louder, and if you're on television, you talk softer, and if you're a giant head on a big screen, you just think. And that's kind of the way it is, really. And but you know, the way you go about playing a character, or you know, just acting is acting. It's all done the same way. It's just literally sometimes you're louder than other times, and sometimes you're working with nobody. You know, there's nobody on the other side. I've done so many scenes with myself, which, by the way, I enjoy. Don't get me wrong. One of my favorite actors to work with. But that technology has made that much simpler, where, you know, you just pretend you're there. And I've worked with real actors I do that with, where I just pretend they're there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, my dear. Yeah, hey.
Thank you, Mr. Spiner. You've told us that you know everybody in Hollywood.
Yes.
Is there one or two?
Everyone who's ever been in Hollywood since I've been alive.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Is there one or two people that you love to get up on stage where you feed off each other, like Harvey Korman and Tim Conway used to do on the Carol Burnett show, where you have such chemistry that you can read each other and just have a wonderful time?
Well, I felt kind of that way about Olivier. I try. Sometimes it lands, sometimes it doesn't. You know what? I mean, most of the people on Star Trek, you know, we've worked together so many years, and we've known each other for so many years, that we're generally pretty comfortable with each other. And there's no getting used to it. You know, people ask, was this strange getting together again and working on Picard after all these years? And I said, really, no. I mean, the only difference was we were wearing costumes and different costumes, you know, and but I see these people all the time, and so we riff off of each other, and it's really easy. Yeah, I'll tell you a guy I love to work with too, who I feel really comfortable with, is an actor named Saul Rubinek. Do you know who Saul is? Yeah. Saul's not there. Hey, Saul. First time I ever worked with Saul Rubinek, you know, he was Kivas Fajo on The Most Toys. That episode, he was the villain. Remember that? No?
Yeah.
Well, curly-headed guy? Okay. And he was on Frasier. Do you remember that? Yeah. But Saul and I go way back. We did a play in New York, again at the New York Shakespeare Festival, a play called Leave It to Beaver is Dead. That's where we met. And it was an amazing play, really. It was written and directed by a guy named Des McAnuff, who, if you've ever seen the Broadway show Jersey Boys, he created that show, among many others. But Saul and I got to know each other on that show. It was me and Saul and a wonderful Canadian actor named Maury Chaikin, who you've seen in a million things, and Mandy Patinkin and Diane Wiest. And none of us had done anything at that point. I mean, Mandy got Evita while we were doing that show. But yeah, Saul and I, so we've been friends, and he then came and did Star Trek, which was an interesting experience. As you probably know this story, but initially it was not Saul in that episode. It was a wonderful actor named David Rappaport, who shot for 2 days, and then the weekend happened, and we came back on Monday only to find that he had taken his life in the park over the weekend. And we had to start over, and there was a Canadian director who was doing that episode, and he said, I know a guy who could probably do this and be here tomorrow. And I said, you know, I think I do too. And it turned out we both had the same person in mind, it was Saul Rubinek. And he was fantastic as Kivas Fajo. And then I did a series that was his show, which was Warehouse 13. And he got me that job. He called me and he said, do you want to do like 6 episodes of Warehouse 13? And I said, yeah, I really do. And I met with he said, listen, come meet with the showrunner, head writer, wonderful guy. And I read the first episode, and there was like no humor in it at all. He was just a really serious, villainous kind of guy. And I went, oh my gosh, I don't know if I want to do this. And I told him that day, I said, I don't know. His name's Jack, and I said, Jack, I'm not sure I want to do this. I mean, there's no humor in it at all. And he said, well, that's the character. And he said, you know, I'm not going to talk you into it. And I said, well, I think you're going to have to. And so he did, and I wound up doing it, and it was a great joy. Yeah.
Thank you.
What was your question? Oh, never mind. Okay. Hi, everybody over here. Yeah, maybe it's best you didn't.
Big fan of 80s, because I grew up in the 80s.
80s? I remember the 80s.
And the first thing I ever saw you in, this is before I knew Star Trek, all that kind of stuff, and I mentioned it to you earlier today, was as Bob Wheeler on Night Court.
Yeah. Night Court. I was never on Night Court. Yeah, I was on Night Court.
And, you know, before that time, what other kind of stuff did you do? How did you get into acting? Give us a little bit of the stuff. I wasn't familiar with you before that time.
You kidding?
Sorry.
I must have done 50, 60 movies before that. No. I tell you what, I had been in New York. I went to New York out of college because in my day, that's what you did. If you wanted to be a serious actor, you went to New York, did some theater, and learned how to act, and then you if you wanted to make some money, you went to California and tried to do some TV. And that's what I did. And so I had done several shows. I'd done a couple of Broadway shows by then, and several off-Broadway shows. I did a play at the Public Theater called Leave It to Beaver's Dead. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I just recently heard of it, yes.
Yeah. Saul Rubinek was in that, did you know that? Yeah. But the first job I had in television when I got to LA, you know what I went to LA with? I got a play. I did Little Shop of Horrors. And, yeah. And I went, originally I went in to audition for the part of the dentist. And they said, yeah, the guy who's doing it now has got to leave in a couple of months, and we're going to use you. You're going to come in and replace the guy who's playing the dentist. And before that happened, I got a phone call. Would you be interested in going to California, into Los Angeles, and instead of playing the dentist, you would play Seymour? And Seymour's the lead. And I said, yeah. And so I went to California. The guy who was originally playing the part, Lee Wilkoff, he created the part. Tremendous act, loved Lee. As a matter of fact, Lee's daughter is my goddaughter. And I played Seymour for, I closed the show out there. I think it ran for 2 or 3 weeks with me in it, and they closed it. But it was a great part, and I enjoyed doing it. And the last performance of the show, I was getting ready to go back to New York, and the last performance of the show, a casting director came named Lynn Stallmaster, who was a huge casting director in Los Angeles at 20th Century Fox. And he said, hey, come see me next week. And I said, okay. So made an appointment, and I went to see him, and he said, there's a couple of shows I'd like you to audition for, and I wound up getting both of them. And one of them was an episode of a TV show called Paper Chase, and the other one was a TV show, it was a mini-series called The Life and Times of Robert F. Kennedy. And I had a really nice part in that, and I thought, this is like easy. You know, I just throw out the line and reel in the jobs. And those were the last 2 jobs I ever got for about 5 or 6 years. But then I went back to New York, came back to LA, and the first job I did was Hill Street Blues. And I had a really nice part on Hill Street Blues. I think I did 2 episodes. Yeah, and I played a porno director. Yeah, I was perfect for it. And, I couldn't believe I got this part, but I felt really good about it because I'd been watching Hill Street Blues, and I'd never seen anybody be bad on the show. So I thought, I'm not going to be bad. I'm not going to be the first person who's ever been bad on Hill Street Blues. And I wasn't. It was pretty good. And then that started the ball rolling, and I started to get other things, and the rest is history. Right?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Live long and prosper.
Thank you. You too.
Hey Brent, thanks for being here today. Thanks for taking the time.
Delighted. Delighted you're here as well.
Right side.
Yeah.
So, Star Trek came out approximately 30 years ago, at least.
36 years ago, I believe, for our show.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So since then, since 36 years ago, the basic person did not understand what the internet was or knew it existed. Technology has come a long way. Mm-hmm. In addition to more recent portrayals of AI in movies and film, those 2 things together, if someone would come to you tomorrow and say, hey, we have got this great idea for a character named Data, it's on a starship. Based on what you know now, how do you think you changed your preparation, your Data's affect, how he interacts with people? Do you think that would...
Well, if it came to me now...
Yes, and a brand new character Data.
Well, I mean, I would say, it's been done.
Yeah,
it's been
That's
done.
what I meant. That's what I meant. It was
And it's been done perfectly, I would say. Right. What can I add to this? No, I know what you mean. Yeah, I know what you mean. I have, hypothetically, I have no idea. I mean, pretty much if they came to me and said, we have this great job for you, I would say, yeah.
I'll take that too, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't happen to have a great job for me, do you?
If Data's character was new as of next year,
Right.
do you think you
Play it differently?
play it different? Yeah.
Well, Data, nah, I don't think so, because Data was always different. You know, I mean, he was an evolving character.
Sure.
And he kept changing and changing and changing.
Okay.
And that was the idea from the beginning, was Data is going to get closer and closer and closer to humanity.
Learning model. Yeah.
Sorry?
Learning model.
Right. But ultimately, by the end, whatever that may be, he's going to be so close to being human and still not. And I think that's the way.
And I think Data is Christ-like. You have 20 minutes to go. I'm here to help you through it.
Thank you, man.
We have a very special question and announcement to make.
Yes.
Brent and I are getting married. No. Already married.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We look good together.
We're already Michelle.
We are, Michelle.
Yeah. Yes. Hey.
I was gonna get straight to the point.
What? Gonna get straight to the point.
Just straight to the point, you know?
Yeah, okay.
Out of anyone in your career, who have you had the most or least complications with?
Wow. That's such a good question, really. I think that's the premise of my entire new book. And I think I could even do it as a show, couldn't I? I could just stand or sit and talk about people I've known and entertain you for the rest of your lives. So basically, you want to know who I've really liked working with or really hated working with?
Well, I was gonna do liked, but then the Paul Rubinek question kind of, well, yeah, so I said, hey, maybe least.
Maybe there's somebody I didn't like, right?
Yeah. There's gotta be somebody.
Oh, but he just walked off. Now I'll tell you who it was. I loved working with Sir Patrick. Of course, he insists on my calling him Sir Patrick. No, you know what? I'll be honest with you. I have almost never worked with anyone I didn't like. Actors are really great, and they are all kind of, for the most part, feel the same way. Let me tell you a story real quick. It's a brief story. I met a guy this morning, a man and his wife, both, who I've admired for so long, it was, I felt, you know, I did the fan thing. I went up to their table while they were eating breakfast, you know, which is, I told you I'm a fan too. And I had to, because I'd never met this guy and I admired him for so long. And we have something in common. And that is, it was William Daniels and his wife, Bonnie, who, lovely people. They actually tolerated me for a few moments, which was very kind of them. But William Daniels and I have something in common. We both played John Adams on Broadway. And he was the original, and I did the revival. And I said to him, we have something in common. I played John Adams on Broadway. And he said, no, I played John Adams on Broadway. He was the man. And that was thrilling. But in answer to your question, I have worked with one guy. He was one of the first guys I ever worked with. He was abominable. I'm not going to say his name. I will in the book. But it was the first play I did in New York, and this guy played my brother, and he was so terrible to me. And I thought, gosh, is this what professional theater is? Oh my gosh, this is going to be awful. And then he was fired in the middle of the rehearsals and replaced with another actor who was so nice. And I thought, okay, I can stay in this business. Anyway, there you go. All the best, mate. Hi, I just want to say hello to you people for a moment. Show you this side of my face, as opposed to this side of my face.
Well, somebody else asked the question I was originally going to ask you, so I'll ask a different one. Are you
Why
going
not?
to do any more recording? You know, like Old Yellow Eyes is back?
You know, feel free to ask me the same question if you want. I'm sure I'll answer it differently.
I was going to ask, is Bob Weaver going to make an appearance on the new Night Court?
Well, you didn't ask me that, but I mean, no one asked me that, but I will say, they haven't asked me. They have to ask me. You know, I can't just show up.
Bob Weaver would show up.
I just walk onto their set in the middle of all their shooting and go, Mr. Judge, I just need to ask a question. I'd love to see Bob Wheeler again, you know, but actually, I tell you what, apparently at a Critics Association meeting, one of the critics asked John Larroquette, who stars on the show, of course, will we see Brent Spiner on the show as Bob Wheeler? And he says, well, you know, I think he might be a little too expensive for us now. And I thought about that, and I thought, yeah, he's right. Like, you never know, I might do it. But your real question, was am I going to do another CD?
Singing recordings, you know, like old...
Never.
Never.
No, I will. I may. I just have to get to the point where I want to lose a lot more money, and then I'll make another CD. Thank you so much.
I was guessing that Johnny and you were going to do a new show.
Yeah, we are.
Are you available next Friday in Minnesota?
I don't know. I don't think we're going to be ready that soon, because it's all being put together right now, but can you wait like
Sure.
a couple months or
Anytime.
you know?
I'm pretty free.
Yeah, all right. I mean, so what do you want me to do? What do you want us to do?
I'll come up with something.
Oh, you haven't even come up with it. Yeah, that's not the point of the show. It's just, what can I think of to make them do? No, it's, it is, but to benefit somebody else, somebody who would be benefited by our doing that.
All right, so my original question, how many cats played Spot?
Spot was, to my knowledge, was 3 cats. I only really remember 2 of them. I don't know what happened to the first one. But they were called Brandy and Monster, and easily the worst actors I've ever met.
Finally named them. You said you weren't going to say it.
What's that?
You said you weren't going to say the people you least like to work
Well,
with.
that's true. I should have said that, yeah. But you know what? I'll take it back. They were better than that guy was. No, you know what? The difference is, really, that guy who was so awful to me was a really good actor. And I've seen him in many things since then, and he's always excellent. I don't know what was bugging him then. Maybe he was just overwhelmed by my whatever.
You're wide shot.
Yeah. But no, the cats were abominable. You know, and I love cats, don't get me wrong. People think, oh, you hate cats because you didn't like Spot. No. I loved even those cats. They just couldn't act. Seriously, they would write things for these cats to do that they simply couldn't do, you know, and the writers knew that. They just wanted to upset me. But whenever I would open a script and it said Spot, I was like, oh no. Because it was going to take all day long to shoot with these guys. And it's so silly, you know, these quote-unquote trained cats. Sure. The guy had a honky thing. thing that we got, and that was supposed to make them do what? They did nothing. They never did anything right, ever.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thanks for being here.
pleasure. All right, how you guys doing? Yeah, good. Hey.
Okay, so this character's already been mentioned, but I want to ask you a question about your greatest character ever. If Bob Wheeler was in the Federation, what rank and career would he be? Extra points if you could do it in this voice.
I don't think Bob would be in the Federation. Bob can barely speak. You know.
No, I don't think Bob would. I thought what you were going to ask me is if somebody came to me now and said you could play Bob Wheeler with all the new technology, would you play him the same way?
So we could get a CGI Bob Wheeler?
I would play him exactly the same way. Except for one thing. He'd be much, much older.
I'll take it.
Yeah. Hi there.
Good afternoon. I was curious if you had any particular anecdotes about working with Stephen Sondheim.
Well, yeah. Stephen Sondheim was, I don't know, is he the greatest genius I've ever worked with? I've worked with several. I mean, obviously Gene Roddenberry was a genius, but Stephen Sondheim, I mean, I couldn't believe I was getting to work with Stephen Sondheim. It was fantastic. I was so intimidated by him that I could barely speak when I was around him, but I mean, the greatest talent of the musical theater in my lifetime, and greatest lyricist maybe ever. Beautiful, melodies. Truly a genius. And I didn't get to know him well while I was working with him, but a few years later, a friend of mine, a guy by the name of John Logan, who wrote, by the way, your favorite Star Trek movie, Nemesis. Well, John also, by the way, wrote Gladiator and The Aviator and Hugo and on and on and on and on. But he wrote the movie of Sweeney Todd. And so he called me one day and he said, hey, Sondheim's coming out to California and we're going to have lunch. Do you want to join us for lunch? I said, yes, of course I do. And so I went, my wife, my son, Rick Berman and his wife came, Rick who produced Next Generation, and we just had the most wonderful day, and we talked and talked and talked and talked. It was just incredible. And afterwards, Stephen said to my friend John, he goes, God, I knew Brent all those years ago, and we never even spoke. And we had such great conversation. And it was thrilling to be around him. And I saw him one more time after that in New York. This was kind of interesting. I went to see a production of La Cage aux Folles that starred a friend of mine, Kelsey Grammer. And you've heard it. Kelsey, when I was in Sunday in the Park with George, that was the production I did for Stephen Sondheim. We did it as a workshop first. And in the workshop, Kelsey Grammer was in the show. That's where I met Kelsey. And it was Mandy Patinkin and Bernadette Peters, Kelsey. It was wonderful. And but it was just a workshop. We didn't know if it was going to go to Broadway or not. And one night, and we used to get notes after the performance. And one night after the show, James Lapine, who wrote the book and directed the show, gave Kelsey a note in a sort of in a manner that you wouldn't expect a director to give a note like that. It was really hard and in front of everybody. And Kelsey blew up in front of everybody and said, "Don't you ever talk to me like that again." It's in Lapine's book. He has a book out called Putting It Together, and that's in the book. And Jim is a really nice guy, by the way. He didn't know at the time. You don't do that but it so put off him and Sondheim that when we went to Broadway, which was 6 months later, they didn't hire Kelsey. And Kelsey was brilliant in the show, but they hired somebody else to do the Broadway version. And ironically, the day we started rehearsing Sunday in the Park with George for Broadway, Kelsey got a call to go to Los Angeles and audition to play a character called Frasier on Cheers. And so if Kelsey had been in the show and had not been fired, maybe someone else would have played, Frasier. Who knows who would have been Frasier? But now he's doing Frasier again. Frasier's coming back again. And but anyway, the last time I met Sondheim, I'd gone to see Kelsey in La Cage aux Folles, and afterwards we went to a restaurant, and Sondheim was sitting behind us, and I said, "Let's say hi to Steve," and he went, "Yeah." So we got up and we went around and said, "Hey, Steve, hey, Brad, oh, Kelsey, how are you?" And Kelsey said, "Good, Steve, how are you?" And he says, "Good." Sondheim said, "You owe me." He said, "If we hadn't fired you, you would never have been Frasier." And it's true. But there you go.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Hi, Brent.
Hi.
My husband said to tell you hi, so that's that. Hi.
Did he?
Yep, he sure did.
Well, will you tell him something for me? Hi.
All right. I got a question for you, and it's not going to hurt my feelings if you address the other half of the room this time.
Oh, go ahead.
They need their chance.
Yeah.
Right. I loved you in Independence Day.
Thank you.
I just want your opinion, and I know you said you don't watch your own movies. Was it really necessary to make that sequel, The Resurgence?
Well, I don't know if it was necessary. I mean, what's necessary, really? I'll tell you what, you didn't care for Resurgence, right?
I wonder what your first clue to that was.
I think it was it necessary? You know what, let me tell you something, though. I have a much better part in it than I had in the first film.
I said I loved your part. Yeah.
Maybe, just maybe, they should make another one with just me. You know what? I actually have an idea, and I pitched it to Dean Devlin, who co-wrote Independence Day with Roland Emmerich, and Dean produces Leverage and has produced Leverage for years, and he has other shows on. He's quite an entrepreneur in the television business, and I pitched to him the idea of doing a show called Area 51, and starring Dr. Oaken, and have it, I think people would watch that. And he said to me, "That's a no-brainer." And I said, "Come on, And he said, "You know what, I'm going to talk to the people at Disney, because they own it now. That 20th used to own it, but then Disney bought 20th, and so now Disney has it." You know what, write Dean Devlin. If you're on Twitter, say, "Hey, how about Area 51 with Dr. Oaken as a series?" I'm sure he wouldn't mind being reminded. Anyway, you know what? Everybody starts a movie thinking, "We're going to make the best movie ever. It's going to be so great." Have you ever seen Dude, Where's My Car? Actually, you know what? I take that back. Dude, Where's My Car is a really good movie. I think it is the quintessential 80s movie. What I meant to say was, what was the movie I was in with Dana Carvey? A Master of Disguise. Master of Disguise is one of the worst movies ever made. And I made an even worse movie than that. called Material Girls with Hillary and Haley Duff. And if you saw that on a triple bill with Resurgence, you'd think Resurgence was a classic.
Thank you very much.
Let me ask you a question real quick. Will you watch Area 51 when this audience convinces Dean to push it? Well, we have 2 minutes left. How many people are in line still? 100. Just one? Oh dear. Well, go make yourselves comfortable because we're never going to get to you. Well, all of a sudden it went to 50 minutes. It said 2 minutes just now. What happened? Did I just get another 50 minutes? No, I don't know what that means. Anyway, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 2 over. I was 2 over already. Was someone ever going to stop me? Well, you can ask your question. You're going to be the last one. All right. Okay. Sorry?
Hello? Okay. So, have you ever met Alan Alda or any of the cast from MASH?
Cast of MASH, yes. I've never met Alan Alda. I certainly am 1 or 2 degrees away from him. But David Ogden Stiers was on our show. Wonderful guy. Funny, brilliant, a great comedian and actor. Yeah. There you go. Let that be a lesson to you. All right. I guess that's it. By the way, I want to thank you so much for doing this.